Alright, so I forgot to add in some things why I'm also disappointed in the state of gaming right now. So, what is it? Games coming out that's not finished or needs lots of patches to make finish, or just super buggy games. Like New World. New World's a great example of an MMO that was just so buggy and needed lots of bug fixes. It was just not ready. Cyberpunk 2077. I found out that the creators of Witcher 3 made that. That's shocking. That is oof. Big oof. Uh, Battlefield 2044, 20, whatever the newest Battlefield was, absolute garbage. Final Fantasy 15, absolute trash. I I wish we can just take off the label Final Fantasy off of that game and just put a new name on that game, because it is not, in my opinion, is not a Final Fantasy game. And I'll get into that more because I hate it that much. What else was bad? Oh, No Man's Sky was bad. But now it's good. I'd rather hear more success stories like that, but at the same time, I don't want to be waiting years for your game to become good. It's kind of annoying, and when the game has like, there's a point where you're gonna run out of content, and if you're, and then that's the thing is like games like real and beta waiting and trying to get more people on board so they can get more money to progress more of the game. It's just like, there needs to be a point where you just release it. And sometimes it happens, but other times it doesn't. And sometimes it takes like 5-6 more years before it actually releases. And by then, like, all the content's been already drained from that. No one's truly interested. You might get like a small flux of people, but it's not gonna be what it used to be, and people aren't gonna be talking about it because they've seen it for the past 6 years. And I know, what was it? Factorio actually finally released, but it has been a long time, and people seen it. Even though I love that game to death, people don't really watch it because they already experienced the game. They know what the game's about, and you're just watching someone because you want to watch them and not really watch the gameplay. Um, Satisfactory is going down the same road. They're taking forever to release their game. I know they are working on it. They are doing a lot more communication than most indie games or self-development games. I don't even know what to call them. With their community and getting their community involved. But it still stands that the more years that go by, the less relevant your game becomes. And when it finally releases, everyone that's been playing for X amount of years, they're gonna kind of be bored of it, kind of drop off, kind of want to do something else, because guess what? They've been playing it for the past years. You've been trying to make it good. And then the last point on top of that is I hate the alphas, the betas that are just, they're like, we have all this cool stuff we want to do, but you, the community, gotta give us your money. And then they get the money, and it still takes them like a year or two to add in all that stuff, or even 3, or they don't even do it all. What was that? Conan Exiles. Oh my god, dude. That game could have been so good, and they plan to like add in a lot of cool stuff, but I don't know what they did. After a while, I just gave up and lost track, because like they're trying to raise up all this money, and they're like, oh, we got these super huge plans we're gonna do. I'm not even sure if they did it or not. I don't know if they just skipped it. They have made their own content. I have been keeping up once in a while. I know they they completely changed the battle system. You can climb now and all this and that, but like still, it still took years before that happened. And it's just, I don't like all this buildup of hype over, and then they kind of hold all this cool stuff that they want to announce hostage to how much money people are willing to give you. I kind of don't like that. It should be. I feel like it should be more of, these are the things we're gonna do, but if you give us money, we can do them faster. But we're still gonna do all of them. I hate the games just like, oh, if we don't reach it, we're not gonna do it. I hate that. And then back to Final Fantasy 15. So if you think Final Fantasy 15 is a good game and that was your first Final Fantasy game, you're delusional. Get out. You're not a Final Fantasy player. Final Fantasy 15 belongs in the trash. It should not even be called Final Fantasy 15. I don't know. Take the title Final Fantasy off that stupid game. And if you are a Final Fantasy lover and you love Final Fantasy 15, then you are, to me, in my eyes, just as bad as the people and just chatting on Twitch, because Twitch is supposed to be a place for gaming. I know Asman doesn't see eye to eye to that, but in my eyes, like, Twitch is for gaming. It's cool to, hang out with your people playing games, not just hang out with people. I understand Asman is just like, oh, but that's not blah blah blah. But now that kind of gets into like making money. I don't know. I think it's kind of dumb to try to debate this, because I don't know how to put it, but I see it's for all entertainment still. But in my eyes, like, Final Fantasy 15 was just a hangout thing with a movie slap. You're just watching a movie and hanging out with people. The game's trash. Game's trash as a standard of Final Fantasy. Yeah. But a little bit more backstory on Final Fantasy, since Final Fantasy made me the gamer I am. The addicted gamer I am. I started at 7. 7 was just like massive. Like, I would say Final Fantasy 1 was massive, right? That brought in a lot more people. Final Fantasy 7 was just like another explosion of that, but to a bigger scale and like its own cult following. So I love Final Fantasy 7 to death. I will never change that to be my favorite game ever. It is just, to me, the best. Final Fantasy 8 good, Final Fantasy 9 good, Final Fantasy 10 another explosion. So 1, 7, 10 to me are like the 3 highest of the Final Fantasy games in my opinion. I don't know about actual facts, but that to me, those 3 stand out, because Final Fantasy, that was their Final Fantasy. It was supposed to be their very last game, but it actually went well, so they kept making them. 7, they went from Nintendo to PlayStation. Nintendo could have kept them, but Nintendo was just not being so nice, and you can look into that. 10 was their, sadly 10 is only, like, there's Final Fantasy 10 and Final Fantasy 12, and those are the only 2 on PS2. It took them so long, but 10 was just phenomenal. Graphics, story, everything was just phenomenal. It was amazing. I still love it to this day, and I would definitely play it all over again. But then, what was it? Yeah, Final Fantasy 11. I'm not going to talk anything about Final Fantasy 11, because back then I was not paying a subscription for any game. I was just like, no, that's dumb. I need as much money as possible. Then Final Fantasy 12 came out. Great battle system, great skill system, except for the magic. The magic kind of once you start fighting other monsters with magic, you'll see that flaw. Storyline was kind of garbage. There was like the main character, just throw that main character to this, put him to side character. We all know who the two main characters should have been in that game. Um, and yeah, and the story kind of just suffered after that. So Final Fantasy, and in my opinion, I'm not gonna count the Final Fantasy on the. I forget. Final Fantasy was on GameCube with Final Fantasy Crystal, and then they tried a Final Fantasy on the Wii U. I heard Crystal was good, but the one on Wii U, that's pretty bad. Not as bad as Final Fantasy 15 though. Fuck that game. So in my eyes, the very first bad Final Fantasy was Final Fantasy 12. And I wouldn't call it all bad. I would say it's like half bad because the combat and the battles and their bosses was really fun to do, and like I grinded like 200 hours on it. I had so much fun with the battle system and their bosses. It's just the story was just such trash. And then Final Fantasy 13, it was 13 was a good challenge, but it was very linear, and they took out town. They started taking out features that Final Fantasy had, and I don't know. Stop taking out features Final Fantasy has. Make the whole game. Final Fantasy 13 to me is a great movie. Not really a game. Same with Final Fantasy 13 2 and 13 3. That's just a Barbie simulator. I'm not even gonna touch that game. No, thank you. Yeah, and then we have Final Fantasy 14, which we all know was a tragedy when it first came out, and over the years they made it better and better, and now it's a fantastic MMORPG. I did play it for a while. I'm taking a break from it. I don't know when I'm gonna come back. And then Final Fantasy 15 was just absolute garbage. Just absolute garbage. Trash. What a disappointment. And now I have hopes for 16, but I'm not going to be like super hyped. I'm going to let the gameplay and the story speak for itself, and hopefully they have everything a Final Fantasy game has in it, from like past experience, like, you know, towns, people to talk to, good battle system, good battles, good bosses. It's just all there in Final Fantasy. Hopefully they don't ruin it, because if so, Final Fantasy is just going to become a side game that I might indulge myself in. And that's where we're at right now. There's not much to play. There's Elden Ring. There's PoE to play, but PoE's been out for 10 years. Is it 10? Yeah, 10 years. Officially out, I think, didn't it come out in like 2013? So maybe one more year, and then it'll be 10 years since it's been officially out. I played during the beta, so. Was it New World? Nah, people don't play New World. What else? Final Fantasy 14. Yeah, gaming's hurting right now. I need there to be a really solid game. Well, that'll be it for now. I guess I'll make this part 2 because I don't want to see like 20-minute videos. So this is part 2 of why I think gaming's just in a bad spot. Mobile gaming, pathetic.